Hello, everybody. Okay, there we go. I really need to find a place to put that on the air sign. So it's better positioned. Hello. So sorry for Wednesday. I wasn't able to get on. Something was wrong. I was not the only one. I was looking at the blog posts of people, and a lot of people were complaining they couldn't go live on Wednesday. So we are live today. So at least that's what it is. Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. This is the Shortwave radio stream where we talk about radio, shortwave radio, and just have fun, and radio in general also at the same time. I hope that you will enjoy today's live stream, as we'll talk about all sorts of things with radio and entertain, hopefully. My name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. We are in the northeast part of North America. And I've had my first COVID shot. So it's halfway done. And I felt like crap all day yesterday with that. But today is okay. I feel right. So at least we're moving ahead slowly, hopefully to some normal life eventually. And let's cross our fingers that things get better as we progress in the vaccination and all of that. So we talk about radio, shortwave radio, all sorts of things radio related, and we just have a lot of fun and enjoy having people around on the chat room. So if you have a Gmail, you can actually join in the chat room. If you don't, well, you can just send me a little hello at the email, which is officialshortwaveradio@gmail.com. Hey, I'll say hi, and we can already say hi to Elizabeth, saying hello from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And she says, happy to be here. Missed Wednesday's show. Hope everything's all right. So, hello, Elizabeth. Nice to have you here from the email. And we, of course, are going to take a look at radio in general. And if you're new to the hobby, if you're just learning the tricks and the tips and the stuff that you need to know, which, is cool because now you have people that are actually there that can answer your questions. Something I would have loved if, when I was starting out with my realistic DX 100, still thinking about how that was such a learning curve. And it's still a learning curve for everybody. But today, at least, you've got a lot of resource, a lot of information on learning how everything works. And it really, really is nice for that. I always like to say that the internet is here to complement, to be some, add-on to the shortwave hobby, not killing it. If it was killing it, then, the stations like Radio Netherlands would have gone online. They would have stayed on the internet thinking that was the new way of broadcasting. They didn't. So there was no new way of broadcasting. For them, if shortwave was dead, it was dead. there was nothing else. A lot of people say, well, Radio Australia is still streaming. Radio Australia is not what Radio Australia that we knew and grew up with, for those of us that been there for a long time, was. Radio Australia was moved to the ABC, and it was broadcasting most of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It's not the same. It was not Radio Australia. Of course, we still miss what was left, but it was really not the Radio Australia that I grew up with in my teenage years, where there's so much stuff we learned from the Pacific, from what was happening in Australia itself, and of course, the added bonus of a cool signal coming from the other side of the world that was strong enough. Also, Radio Australia was really, really nice in the morning and the summer evenings. It's like Radio New Zealand in the evening. It's a summer thing here in the East Coast. So if you're new to the hobby, this is the best place, I think. Wonderful people that are here to help, and no one's going to make you feel like you're, that question you ask is dumb or anything. We don't do that here. Here, every question is important, and when you don't know it, you just don't know it. I mean, you're not born with a shortwave radio in your hands and all the knowledge that goes with it. We all start out with zero knowledge, and hopefully here is a place where that zero knowledge can turn into enough knowledge to help you know what you're listening to and learn more of the shortwave radio hobby. We are here live twice a week. Unfortunately, this week, Wednesday, had some glitch on YouTube, but usually we are Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's Wednesday in North America. But for Europe and most of the rest of the world, it's actually Thursday because it's 0 hours Universal Time. And we are also live on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's 20 hours Universal Time. And we talk about shortwave radio, listen to the bands, and have a lot of fun together as a gang of radio fans, actually, and radio friends at the same time. When the party's over here, there's something you can go to, which is the Facebook group. The Facebook group is that place where everything continues. You can continue talking about radio, asking questions, sharing what you're listening to, pictures, videos of your radios, and just have fun, continue having fun with a great crowd. We're almost at 1,700 people. 1,700 people. That is very nice, and it's still growing. So it's really cool to have all of you here, and to have everybody in watching in the live show, and continuing in the Facebook group, and having just a lot of fun. And the Facebook group, word of warning to anybody that joins, is a very it's a very clean group. There's no talking about something that doesn't have anything to do with radio. There's no politics or religion in there. It is radio, simply radio, and no one goes there and makes you feel like trash. It is not allowed. It is a clean group. We want to keep it that way. And we're actually extremely fast in removing anybody that doesn't abide by the rules. And be warned, because it's a group that really, really cleans itself very fast of people that don't abide by the rules or anybody that wants to troll. And in a result, well, it's actually a very nice group with a lot of really cool people that, share their opinion and talk about radio. So welcome, everybody. And now we are, of course, Saturday, May the 1st, already month of May. I have a hard time grasping the notion of time in the past few months. It seems like the year is going by very fast. The 2020 was that. I know that it's that kind of year that we all wanted to forget. 2021 here, at least in Montreal, is still not. We're still not out of the woods. Although we seem to be maybe going in the right direction, hopefully. except certain provinces here in Canada. Ontario, for example, it's crazy what's happening there. At least here in Quebec, there's a certain control right now. But you feel that it's just on the edge. It's like there's a certain control, but it doesn't take much to flip to the bad side. So I know that here in the province, I think it's 33% of all the people had at least their first COVID shot. So I'm actually part of the statistics now. And basically, they're thinking that by summer we might actually be able to get close to a kind of a normal, a certain normality, actually. So welcome everybody, and hope that you're going to have fun. Lots of Pirates last tonight. I was listening to the bands, finishing up on my Messenger utility column. So I was actually handing just doing and finishing up on the column and tuning the shortwave bands at the same time. And quite a few. There was a WDOJ AM mode on 6950. It was very strong. I mean, the Pirates last night were strong. Propagation was probably very good because, I mean, wow, Pirates were really, really good. There was one on 6933. There was one called The Voice of Communism, which at the first I was like, Voice of Communism, okay. And then I started thinking, well, May 1st is kind of a Labor Day around the world. It's kind of weird because May 1st is Labor Day for most of the world, celebrating, workers and all of that. Here in North America, for some reason that I have no idea, Labor Day is a holiday in September. And May 1st, just has really nothing special. And that has always surprised me because, I mean, really, the majority of the world celebrates that on May 1st for some reason. We don't. So for those that are celebrating, happy Labor Day, and hope that you're having fun. And May 1st, we are moving ahead slowly towards summer propagation. And it's already showing. Afternoons, like early afternoon, is very quiet on the bands, because that's something you got to understand. When I get people telling me I don't hear nothing on my radio, at what time are you listening? First of all, this is an important question because shortwave is not like AM FM. Shortwave is not, you turn on the radio, there's your local stations and the favorite stations are there. Stations have a schedule and have target areas. So, and the reason why is because depending on time of day, it's not always, great. It's not always good. And one of the times that is probably the crappiest to listen to shortwave around, local noon, when, especially in the summer, local noon is like a very quiet moment. And there might be some signals, yes, but they're not, they're weaker than average for the rest of the day. And then as the day goes by, it progresses. You're getting into the afternoon and then late afternoon, and signals come alive, and a lot of signals come alive. Lots of stuff start coming in onto your radio. And the evening is usually summer evenings are usually really good for shortwave radio listening. So there's times that are better to listen to. And also, you got to understand that with the times, oh God, with the times that you have in listening, you also have the noise around you, and that's the second thing that's going to make you not hear anything. So if you don't hear a lot in whatever time of day you're listening, then the second thing that is a problem probably is the noise around you. And that noise around you is a killer thing. And for all of us, our hobby is dependent on the amount of noise there's around, and that is crazy. That is crazy because it seems like the noise is just expanding, and there's more and more of it as time goes by, and you end up maybe rethinking what the hobby is all about, and should I listen or not. But when I hear somebody talk about there's nothing on shortwave, the first thing that I think is, yeah, because there's too much noise probably where you are. Because honestly, there's still a lot of things on shortwave. Oh yeah, it's not 1980, that's for sure. But there's still a lot of stuff on shortwave, and there's a lot of signals there. And look at the EIBI space schedules by time. Just look at how many stations broadcast at a certain time of day. There are hundreds, and every hour. There's hundreds of frequencies that are used for all sorts of things. But the problem is target area, frequencies you might not hear because of your location, things like that. And it's something that you got to take into account. But once you take that radio out, go somewhere in the woods, go in a park. You don't even need to go very far. Go to a local park where you'll just be a little further away from all the buildings. And you'll suddenly see that, wow, look at that. There's a lot of signals coming in suddenly. So, that's something important. I feel sad when I see somebody, commenting on a video and saying, well, I purchased that radio that you're showing here. I'm not getting anything. And, one of the comments I posted on the Facebook group is how many people took their radio back or sent the radio back thinking it was broken, when in reality, it worked fine. It's just that noise and lack of knowledge of how propagation works made you believe that, well, there's nothing on. I hear 3 stations. Okay, this thing is broken. Or probably some will not say it's broken, but they'll purchase a radio. They're going to listen for a day or two. They're going to hear, a few religious broadcasters from the US and nothing more. And they're going to say, well, okay, so there's really nothing interesting here. And they'll return it. And it's with a little digging and a little more experience that hopefully you learn that there's stuff to listen to, but you got to know how. And there's that learning curve of shortwave. There's that learning curve of shortwave. Actually, it's there, and like every hobby. But you can understand why somebody purchasing a radio for a couple of, for $100-$200 is going to say, well, I just spent $200 on something that doesn't receive anything. And it's hard to explain sometimes. And I'm sure, and I think I've many of the viewers and many people that worked at Radio Shack, for example, so many of you came back and said, oh man, we had so many returns on shortwave radios, people not knowing how it works and returning it thinking it's broken, So it's I don't know. I always try to put myself in that moment and thinking, what if I was 13 years old today and started in shortwave listening today? What would it be? Would I be hooked? Or would I just be like, doesn't look like there's a lot of stuff here? That's a question. It'd be interesting if we could go. We could temporarily change something, and it's like, okay, you're a newbie, 13 years old, like in 1982, and you have that shortwave radio, which is your first shortwave radio in your hands, and you got to listen to signals out there, and putting it in the same. With the same type of manual that actually from the start tells me where and what to listen to. Where are the signals? What frequency ranges I should tune to? Would I still be hooked today? That's a darn good question. Maybe if, as a 13-year-old, I fall on a stream like this, or on all the websites that exists out there that actually help you understand more of what it's all about. But it's definitely a question you got to ask yourself. Anybody out there, any of you that have been in the hobby for a long time, if you had started the hobby today from scratch at the age that you did, do you think you'd still be hooked? Do you think it still would be something that you would pursue and continue doing? I think some that purchased a radio would have been one of those that would definitely be um, interested with all the stations there, but with turning on the radio and hearing mostly static and very few signals, maybe that changed their mind to, okay, well, I think that's not my hobby, or there's just nothing to listen to, or it's not what I thought it was, or it's a very interesting aspect, and you got to ask yourself that question. As a newbie today, how would it be? You do totally have to ask yourself that question. So, hello everybody. Nice to have everybody in the chat room. PA1SBM, Alex, nice to have you on board from the Netherlands. TV DXer, bonjour, ça va bien? J'espère que tu vas bien toi aussi. Nice to have you here, not very far from Montreal. 45 unit, nice to have you here from Florida. And by the way, I haven't taken a sip of my beer yet. So cheers, everybody. Charles Williams, nice to have you here from San Diego. SoCal, nice to have you here from California. David in Barcelona, nice to have you here. EA3IEK, EA4998URE SWL. Nice to have you on board. David, KJ4CMY from Central Georgia. Rob, nice to have you here. Tom DXer, WPE2QED. Nice to have you here from the Hudson Valley, New York. Jerry DX, nice to have you on board. PLF Radio. PLF Radio, bonjour et bienvenue. J'espère que ça va bien dans ton coin du monde. Toujours agréable de t'avoir parmi nous. Tarek, nice to have you on board from Cairo, Egypt. We have Charlie X says YouTube has been glitchy lately. Yeah, well, apart from the streaming, the unable to really stream on Wednesday, I can't say I've had any problems with any glitch. For anything else, I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. I think in a week, so I'll watch some Netflix. I'll watch some Amazon Prime, but I probably watch more YouTube than Netflix or Amazon Prime because of the diversity of everything there, and all the stuff that you can find. Alex misses the UTC clock. Yeah, I have to find a way to add that here. Maybe reorganize that on the air sign so that it's more visible, and at the same time find a way to put the clock. Maybe they could be one next to each other, the clock and the sign. So I'm going to be working on that. I'm going to try to add the clock back, because I know some of you like to see what time it is and give you the delay. How many seconds delay from the stream, so I'm going to try to find a way. Anyways, I'm destroying part of the desk that I was on the other side. I decided that the top part is going to go, and I'm going to throw it in the garbage. And the reason why is that It takes space, and it's not necessarily something I use really. And I'm going to transform that desk, which is a corner desk, into a desk where all my Commodore 128, my Amiga 500, and my Atari 1040 ST are going to be there. And that's going to be like the retro computer corner, if you want. And I'm going to, I purchased a kind of an up converter that takes like composite signals and transforms them into an HDMI signal compatible with whatever TV. Also, at the same time, what's nice is that it's there's a little button on it that gives me 50 or 60 hertz. So for those that don't know, TV in Europe and TV in North America were designed, of course, on 50 or 60 hertz cycles. And what happens is that although a lot of TVs today switch automatically because they have the circuit, some don't. And so by having that converter, if I play a game that is meant, for example, to switch on 50 hertz in an Amiga, for example, instead of having a weird crooked picture, I just switch it to 50 hertz and it gives me a clean picture like in Europe. So there's all sorts of little things like that. So I'm going to transform that side into the retro computer corner. And this side will be radio. And I'm thinking of the rest of the office. I want to maybe have some stuff taken out. I noticed that, I've got boxes of stuff that I do not use. I have boxes of stuff that I haven't opened the box in, I tell you, 5, 7, 8 years. And I'm thinking, if I haven't used that in 8 years, why am I keeping it? It doesn't serve a purpose. And so maybe I could throw out tons of stuff. Actually, I'm not going to throw it out. What I'm going to do is, put it out in the front and say, look, this is a perfectly working, like here I got a Samsung home theater, 5.1 home theater with the speakers and everything. I mean, here I can't set up stuff like that. It's, if I put something like that up, the neighbors are gonna like go nuts because here the walls are thin and we hear everything. So I'm not gonna use that. I have a slight dilemma. I've got a Fender Stratocaster and a Marshall amp. A big part of me doesn't want to depart from that. At the same time, it's like, yeah, when's the last time you played guitar and actually turned on the amp? I don't even have the cables. I need to have cables. So I'm thinking, what should I do? Should I sell it? Should I sell the guitar? I know that it would have a very nice, street value. Even the Marshall Valve State combo that I got here is, I know it's one of those amps that everybody wants to have. It's part valve, so part of it has a tube, and part of it is transistorized. You can switch from the tube side to the transistor side in the amp. And I remember last time I talked about it to a fanatic of a guitar fanatic, when I said, well, my Valve State 8080 amp, maybe I want to depart. His eyes lit up and it's like, you're going to talk to me first if you sell that thing, eh? Because it's just an amazing amp. And they won't make them like that anymore. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. It has the reverb, the old reverb, which is a spring, which I always found funny. So when you play, the vibrations of the box, basically because of the audio frequencies, the spring acts as a reverb. It's kind of nice. So, anyways, I'm reorganizing the office here, partly because I'm tired of having too much stuff in it. When your room gets too small, this is a pretty big room for people that come here and visit and look at my office. They all say, darn, that's a really big room. But now it feels like a very small room because there's too much stuff in it. And it's just making me like, not wanting to be here sometimes because it's like, yeah, there's stuff on the floor, there's stuff everywhere. It's just annoying more than anything else. So I need to depart from stuff. That's for sure. Anyways, all of that for missing a clock. David Spears, nice to have you on board from the UK. We have Arjun Wiesman, nice to have you here from Cyprus. MStax, nice to have you here. I'm half vaccinated. Yeah. And my next shot is far. I got my shot on Thursday. My second shot is on August 19th. That's really far. I thought it would have been faster than that, but nope. My second shot, August 19th. Aerial imaging, nice to have you on board from Lockport, Illinois. The guy behind these beautiful little radio stands. And he actually makes them. And if you guys want some, he actually sells them. A lot of you I've purchased them, actually. So there's this one here. I've got my Texan PL990 on the bigger one that I have here. Very well made, very nice little stands for radios. It's really cool because, when you put your radio on a stand, use that little plastic stand in the back, it's at a certain angle, which is nice. But I find that the angle that you have with these stands is much more interesting, actually, for using the radio. And in the case of this one is a small one, and it fits for the Texan PL330. In a radio that doesn't have a back stand, this is extremely useful, actually. So aerial imaging, if you should ask the guy if you're interested in some radio stands. He's the guy. Jeff King, nice to have you on board, driving home from work from somewhere of outside Jacksonville, Florida. Nice to have you here. Joe Brown, Southeast Michigan. Francisco, nice to have you on board from Brazil. Kevin, nice to have you here. Now using an SDR Play RSPDX. Was a little difficult getting the drivers to function properly, but well worth it. I now see why SDR is so cool. Cool. That is nice. Wow, I'm surprised they had problems having it working. It's actually, I've installed my RSPDX in pretty much like 4 or 5 different computers. It just worked from the start. One of the things maybe I should do as a video, because there's a lot of that sometimes people miss out. When you plug your RSP device for the first time, so you have to install the software before you plug it in. That's the first very important thing. Once the software is installed, then you plug the RSP device in the computer. But it won't function immediately. What you need to do, and that is an extra step that I've had to do on all the computers I've installed it, is once I plugged it in, so, Windows gives you a little like musical notes to tell you that you plugged in a USB device. But there's 2 notes. There's the notes that go up to say, oh, it's okay, this works. And the ones that go downward in tone, which means that doesn't work. And usually the first time you plug it in, you'll have the notes to say, yep. And then after a few seconds, it's going to have the notes going to say, nope. And you just have to unplug it, wait 3 or 4 seconds, and plug it back. And usually it's fine. But as long as you didn't do that, for some reason, it just doesn't work. Probably restart your PC works. So, well, glad that you've joined the SDR club, and really nice. And SDR is absolutely cool. It's really, really amazing. I can't go without an SDR anymore. On the CIDX monthly meeting, there was Sheldon was asking the question, what if you had only one radio that you could keep? Only one. I said SDR player SPDX. I would have a hard time listening to the radio today without an SDR now. The advantages are so amazing. The waterfall is so great. And I've got a few people, probably diehard radio with knobs guys that come back from time to time and say, well, I don't see anything, great about SDRs or that are better or that. That's because you haven't used one, because you don't know exactly what you're missing out on. Because one of the comments that what came through was, what's a glorified receiver? It's actually you press that ETM scan button and it does the same thing in searching signals. No, it's not the same thing. You're missing out on a lot of details. The ETM scan works, yes, it's going to find signals, yes. But when you're listening to something, you get signals that pop up. And while you're listening, so for example, here, there's one that's popping up here. So you might be interested, if you're not tuned there, I'm going to go click there. There's something. Well, with a portable radio, with a standard analog radio, you miss out on all of that. You don't have the visual that's showing you, oh, look at that. There's a signal here. What's that? And you just click and you're there and you listen. There's so many advantages to this. It's really, really cool. Really, really cool. Keegan, XN80Xer, nice to have you on board from Northwest Arkansas. 81 Fahrenheit. Wow, that is summertime. Here it's pretty cold today. It's actually, what is it right now? It's 12 degrees. It's kind of cold today. I went out to get the beer and I had my leather jacket and I was like, wow, it's kind of cold with the wind. Jerry DX misses the intro with the bird chirping for Radio Australia. Tarek remembers Radio Australia on 13-meter band. Yeah, I was listening to Radio Australia. I remember listening to Radio Australia on 21740 at night. And I mean, there was some really good propagation back then with very strong solar cycles. But I remember 21740 was easy to tune and listen to. Neil Rigby, nice to have you here from UK. And nope, like Alex says, no stupid questions. Jeff Williams, nice to have you on board. Everybody saying hello to Elizabeth. Jeff is in Southwest Cornwall, UK. Rufus Newt, nice to have you on board from the Laurentian Valley, Ontario. Esteban, ¿cómo está mi amigo from the Canary Islands, EA8 DLJ? Nice to have you here. N6 RLS, latest issue of the Spectrum Monitor, has a great article on shortwave broadcasting and another about the future of ham radio. Keep calling CQ is the bottom line there. Absolutely. Nice to have you on board from Berkeley. Broad Skilling, nice to have you here. Bought the PL330, looking forward to expanding listening to SSB. Cool. That's going to be, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with that. Matt, MDK2, nice to have you here from Denver, Colorado. We have TVDXer saying, yep, a lot of pirates last night. And I suspect because it's May 1st, there might be quite a few today also. I wouldn't be surprised that that voice of communism is going to be back. Oh, and there was old broadcasts of Radio Panchovia that were on 6925 also, which is always a very entertaining listen. And apparently in the next weeks, there's going to be more. So listen in. The voice of Panchovia is a very entertaining listen. Francisco, happy Labor Day to you too. Kathleen, nice to have you on board from Germany. Can't believe it's May. A few moments ago was December. Yep. And here it felt like December because, like, just a week ago we had snow. I was like, whoa. Usually May we shouldn't have snow. It's if we do, it's very, very exceptional. May is usually the time when we will have our first 30 degrees Celsius, close to 90 Fahrenheit. And I do have my brand new air conditioning that is ready to be set up in the window here. So that's going to be nice. PLF Radio just have the Texan 3030. I like the way to tune the stations. It would be perfect with RDS and airband. It's too bad it can be tuned between 513 and 520, but I'm okay with the way it is. Yeah, a lot of portable receivers that have the DSP chip miss on the 513 to 520 kilohertz. And there's a few things there, including some Navtex transmissions. But it's part of it's the sadness of the radio sometimes. But it's a small chunk to miss out on, though. It's not like you're missing out on. I rather have that than have those radios that you detune only the international broadcast bands and there's nothing in between, or those that tune but stop at 13 meter bands, so like at 21,850, which is mostly the higher frequency most of the time to use. It just stops there. It's like, there you go. It's like, oh, so I can't tune above anywhere up to 30 megahertz. Glenn Zegman, nice to have you here. Glenn from Tennessee. Ricardo, nice to have you on board from Portugal. Steve Miller, nice to have you on board from cloudy Arizona. Glenn, how good is the Texan PL 660? That's a very good receiver, honestly. What is probably for a lot of people that are kind of turned off by the muting when you tune around, well, this is one of the radios that doesn't mute. So that's one of the good things about it that you might like. But the Texan PL 660 in general is a pretty good radio. David says, I just tried the noise blanker on my IC7100. Noise went from S7 to S0. Amazing. It didn't work in my old QTH. Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, it's one of those, because the IC7100 is kind of an SDR icon, right? It's kind of one of those fancy transceivers. So it probably is capable of nulling out that type of noise you've got where you live. Francisco, about 100 meters of wire to make some long wires. Can't catch much here in the biggest city of South America. Yeah, your problem is probably noise mostly, because there's a lot to listen to. But if there's just a little bit of noise that creeps in there, a lot of the signals are washed out, so you don't hear the stuff that's there. It's there. It's in the noise. A lot of that happens here. I get a lot of the signals here. I can see their lines. I can see that they are in the display in the waterfall. I can see a little peek out of the noise sometimes, but the noise is overwhelming. It's making it impossible. And that's the sad part. And that's where instead of wire antennas, switching to a magnetic loop like the MLA30 can make a huge difference and bring some of those signals out of that noise. The Blind Picker, nice to have you on board. W0RAB in Connecticut. Nice to have you here, Rob. PA1SBM, Alex. Oh, famous expression, the radio's deaf. Yeah. Francisco, I was listening to CW on a PL368, was really fading out. And then a power outage take place and all the signals went very strong. Very interesting. Absolutely. That's the first thing you notice. A power outage, and you notice that, look at that. there's stuff on shortwave, a lot of it. But then the power comes back and it's like, oh, there's nothing on shortwave anymore. It's, it's sad. Honestly, I talked about it, but and by the way, I'm half an hour behind in the chat room, so be patient, guys. Okay. You know, when I moved here, it was the first time that I had to experience really high noise. It was not something I was experiencing before. And um I say shortwave was such a big hobby, and it's such a big thing for me since I started. When I moved here and I couldn't listen to all of what I was used to because the noise floor was so high in 2000. I had kind of, I was sad, and it almost made me stop the hobby for a while because I couldn't get what I wanted, and a lot of what I was able to hear before was difficult. And I'll tell you guys, when I got here, I used a Kenwood R5000, and I would say that the first 5 or 6 years I moved here, I probably didn't turn it on much. And I was able to regain some of that, but story, because my radio was here in the office. This is the side of the apartment that is the street is outside, and there's a power transformer in the electricity pole out on the other side of the street. Because it was easier, I had an antenna in the front, which just to give you guys an idea, when you look at when I post videos, or sometimes, or the Monday video that I post regularly, which is the video of what I try to do this week in the radio videos, you will see my antennas sometimes, and you will see a tree. There's a small tree on one side, and there's a huge tree on the other side. The side with the huge tree, which is the side where my MLA30 is right now, that is what I used for my first antenna. I went out on the balcony and I threw I attached a little weight, and I threw I don't know, I would say maybe 25 feet, 25 feet, 30 feet of wire in the tree. Now, it took me like 10 times before it actually was kind of stuck in a way that I was unable to take it out. So it was really solid. And what I would do, I left it like really hanging with a nice, with a lot of length. So when there's like thunderstorms or big snowstorms in the winter, and the tree moves a lot, the wire could just, extend, and it was okay. It was not going to snap. It was just moving along with the tree. And I'd attach the other end of that wire to the balcony to make sure that I don't lose the end, because if it would fall, I had no way to actually catch it again. And that was my first antenna for probably the first 5 or 6 years I was living here. But that side of the house is very noisy. It's very noisy in the back, but it's worse in the front. And that was my antenna for the Kenwood R5000, which I would enter through a window. And then again, I was not installed really. Is every time I would listen, I would, go put my coax to the antenna outside and bring the coax to my Kenwood and listen in. Actually, I had the wire just like on the floor in the living room. I would just open the door, attach, listen, When it's over, enter the coax, close the door because there was no way of really having the coax going outside. And it was noisy. It had the advantage that I could use that wire on my portables when I would go on the balcony out in the front, which was nice. But it was so noisy that I didn't have a lot of fun with it, honestly. So one day I was looking in the backyard and I started looking at the trees and at everything that's available. And my first antenna actually was using the fence. So the backyard fence goes, I don't know, 30 feet back. I'm estimating it at maybe 30 feet from the house. I put a wooden broomstick on the top of the corner of that fence. On the top of the wooden broomstick was the wire that would come up through would come up from the back door. Here, my backyard door is actually there's so much space under it that I can actually close the door on a coax and it's still okay. And the coax is not even, damaged. Yeah, in the wintertime, it's not the best thing in the world because there's a lot of cold coming in. But you know what? I don't complain about it because it lets me have coax coming in easily. And in the wintertime when it's really cold, I just put some tape to kind of make the isolate the door a little more. And so that's when I started with the Kenwood on so those of you that know my first videos and then my first live shows, that's where suddenly my Kenwood R5000 and then my ICOM ICR 8500 for a while was in the kitchen on the top of the dryer because that's where I had lowest noise and I was able to listen to some stuff a little more. And my first lives that I did from this channel are actually with the ICOM on the top of the dryer in the kitchen. So this is something, and it shows you how difficult I had of a time to have my radios working again. Unfortunately. JRDX, bring your radio to the shortwave doctor. Mongoose, nice to have you on board from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. What else do we have? Matt says, finally heard a station in my QTH that I've been chasing for a long time. VC01, aka Chinese Robot, has been faintly copyable before dawn on 5285. Oh, wow, that's a cool one. That's a really cool one. Stephen Wood, quick band scan this morning, 12 GMT. Logged 10 different countries. Just quickly tuning around. Conditions only fair. Cool. JRDX, heard a lot of those Radio Shack employees had to go to see shrinks from the stress of newbie radio listeners returning their radios. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes back in the 80s when imagine the old ladies coming in and like, so I have this TV that has a round connector circle. How can I connect this square connector circle to the round connector circle? Oh man. I remember once I was paying for something and it was I think it was an old man. It was like, that TV that has that green wire? And everybody's like, the green wire? We don't know what that is. It's like, the green wire. I was like, what? What are you talking about? What TV has a green wire? I don't get it. And he was like pissed because he was like, well, you guys don't know nothing. Well, hey, I knew a lot back then, like the guys behind the counter, and I was like, I remember I looked at the teller and at the guy there paying, and I was like, I never seen a green wire in a TV before. I don't know what he's talking about either. I was like, and they're all like, I don't know. I have no idea. Trustin, nice to have you here from Newfoundland. RJDA Dakota, nice to have you here. Keijo Hutty, I would still be hooked because new digital modes and stuff. Okay. Shelly, nice to have you here from South Central Pennsylvania. What I'm drinking today is TVDXer is Unibrew once again, but it's a Don de Dieu, big bottle of Gift from God. And so this is a 9% ale. So when I usually finish this, I'm kind of tipsy. I'm kind of a little tipsy. Bobby Burgess, nice to have you here from Morgan City, Louisiana. WA5107 SWL. Cherry, thank God I'm not a newbie. Glenn has been the hobby since the 1960. Wow. No, I didn't skip you, Bobby. It's just we're very far. I'm getting now to that, so this is exactly 30 minutes now. I'm going to try to go faster, guys. Okay. And 6 RLS. I think if world broadcasters did the kind of radio they did 30 years ago, but now on the internet, they'd have a good audience. Most broadcasters have given up or just don't care anymore. You know what? And 6 RLS, there were a few stations that tried it. One of those is that Radio Slovakia. Radio Slovakia and Radio Prague kind of quit shortwave pretty much at the same time. And they went internet only. And you've noticed that Radio Prague and Radio Slovakia are back on shortwave, but via WRMI. And they were saying that once they moved to internet, they lost pretty much all of the audience. They wouldn't get they would not get a lot of mail. They would not get any feedback. And they noticed, so we lost everybody. Nobody's listening on the internet. And that's what drove them to come back via WRMI, which was a cost-effective way of doing it. I mean, any shortwave station that's thinking of leaving because of the cost should at least consider, okay, if I don't want to broadcast from my own country anymore because it's too expensive, because I mean, maintaining and broadcasting with these old shortwave transmitters and having an engineer, it's a lot of money. It's millions of dollars. Then you got the WRMI alternative. You don't have to have an engineer. You don't have to, have anything, to take care of, except your programming. And it costs a fraction of the price, and you're on the air. So that's why they are back. They had lost all their audience. And a few stations that actually were on shortwave, another one is Radio Sweden. Radio Sweden moved from shortwave to the internet, and they had a daily English language internet broadcast. They ended up doing, and I'm not sure if they're still doing it, just a weekly English broadcast. And part of the reason for them also is we lost our audience. When we moved from shortwave to the internet, which we thought we would get more people listening, we actually have a fraction of the listeners. People are not listening through the internet, and it's a different thing. The internet, is not. It's not there for that. It's not, even though yes, it's one of those mediums where they could be using some streaming service and stuff. They are noticing that, well, okay, nobody's streaming our stuff. Nobody cares. But when we were on shortwave, people listened in and wrote to us. Eric Cottrell, bonjour, hi, nice to have you on board from the Boston area. Eric, that is back to work from what I see in your posts on Facebook. Hope you're well, my friend. And he's working on his CIDX column today. Yeah, I ended. I had about half of it, not even. I had maybe 30% of it done yesterday morning. And I was like, okay, I gotta kick myself in the butt and do it now. And I ended up doing it last night and sending it to Sheldon. Tom DXer, I got the AstraZeneca vaccine. Yeah, I know that, and that's what we were talking about when I got my shot. Actually, one guy was saying apparently the second shot is worse. It's like, well, my first shot was like crazy killer. Yeah, I mean, what's gonna be the second one? RJ Dakotas have actually been on shortwave and medium wave listeners since 1975. Jerry DX, watch Ozark on Netflix. Pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna check that out. What else do we have? Stephen Wood has Sam Adams summer hail today, every day. Cool. Francisco wants to know how many of you are amateur radio operators. We have a pretty good amount of amateur operators here. That's fun also. Chuck, nice to have you here from Pennsylvania. Catalin wants me to dedicate a wall full of radios. That would be another option. Putting shelves. Actually, that's an interesting idea that you just gave me. How about if I put shelves on the wall? And in that side where my retro computers are, I could have a display. Of radios. That could be interesting. JDX, if you got boxes of radios you don't use, send them to my way. None of the boxes that I talk about that actually I don't use have radios. It's other stuff. I have my electronics course, all the books plus all the electronics that I played with and built in a box. And it's I don't want to depart because it's like, yeah, I built this stuff. It's kind of cool. I learned my electronic stuff here. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, it's in a box for the past 15 years. What are you going to do with it? My sweet city, Paris, is training for radio amateur license. Woohoo! Congratulations. Jerry DX takes everything. He wants me to ship everything. Mark Cope, nice to have you here from Dallas, Texas. Good afternoon. We have Rufus. I've repaired more spring reverb things than I care to remember. Oh, man. Yeah, AstraZeneca, Matt. But here in Quebec, we have a very different way of doing vaccines. Everybody has a 3 to 4 months wait before the second dose. And the reason that happened is that the government took the decision to We'd rather have the maximum amount of people with at least one dose of vaccine as fast as possible, even though it takes longer to get the second one, than go fast, but have to have the population wait longer before they at least have one dose. Because apparently, just one dose is already a very good level of protection. So they're kind of thinking, well, let's get a good level of protection, and even if it takes more time. And from what what they were saying is that they actually contacted the manufacturers of the vaccines, and so the times are far, but apparently the manufacturers are like, yeah, it's fine, it's gonna work fine. And actually, the AstraZeneca, they were saying that one of the latest finds that I read on is that apparently, if it takes longer for you to have the second dose, it's actually even better. So you go with what you have. I had no choice of the vaccine. At my age, I had to take the AstraZeneca or wait. If I wanted to have the Pfizer or Moderna or whatever, then I would not be vaccinated. It was like, then you'll wait. You're going to have to wait. But the AstraZeneca was available for 45 years or older. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take that one. Broad skilling. You're not the only one trying to clean house, doing the same, but oddly adding a radio and antenna in Chicagoland. Yeah. When I had to move stuff around last fall, I ended up, for some reason, I threw away 4 big garbage bags of crap. And then I looked at my office. I'm like, why is it that there's 4 bags full of crap outside and I still don't see that there's more space in here? What else do we have? Alex Johns. We're all going to be dead in 10 years. Oh, God. So what else do we have? Hey, Vojislav. Nice to have you here from Serbia. Just winding some toriads while watching the show. That's very radio-like, Winding some toriads while watching the shortwave radio show. Francisco, calendar for vaccine schedule here in Brazil. Get mine in 4 months from now. Wow. 32 years old. Yeah, here where they're, I think starting yesterday, they started doing 34 to, or something like that. So, what else do we have? David says they are vaccinating everyone in Georgia over 16. Got my first one on Monday. I think it's May 14th here that 14 years or older are going to get a vaccine. PLF Radio says, I saw videos with updated firmware of the SI4732. The display is improved, but not only. Okay. Interesting. RJ Dakota, SDR screen is the equivalent of radar screen. Yeah, pretty much. David does not know when he's going to be vaccinated. Here in Spain, it could as well be months before shots are made for my age group. Hey, Niels Peterson, nice to have you on board. And he's got his new friend, his PL990X. What a nice radio. It is indeed a very nice radio. Our JDA Dakota, always listen to Radio Australia on 21740. Man. Souvenirs. Hey, Sergio Cordero. Buenas tardes. Mi amigo. ¿Cómo está? Nice to have you here, my friend. 17795 was one of those. Marvin Motz, nice to have you on board from the Japan Islands. Trimbali, Mr. Bale, nice to have you on board, my friend. Trimbali, Mr. Bale. What else do we have? Just gonna check out here in the email if anybody has sent any emails. Just say hello that they're watching. Nothing here. Nothing here. So remember, official shortwaveradio@gmail.com. I won't say exactly what, but I've got 2 secret documentations this week to read on. The instruction manual of something future coming up in radio, and also another type of technical document that has to be kept secret. So I know stuff. That are, I know something that's coming up, and I know something that I have the full instruction manual on it. And I know, but unfortunately, it's like in the James Bond movie, for your eyes only. So I can't wait. It's gonna be interesting to see the stuff. JRDX, your cousins were singing in French with violin playing Acadian music. N6RLS doesn't hear a lot of pirates on the West Coast. Lots on East Coast, apparently. Yeah, I have the feeling there's a lot of pirates that are on the northeast side of the U.S., for sure. Randy, Riverside, California. Nice to have you here. GE. So no concerns here with an unapproved injection from... you got to get vaccinated. That's the important thing. Even if you don't believe it, that's the only way we're all going to get into a normal life eventually. PLF Radio. Too bad the drawbacks you showed in your videos on the 909X2. But as you said, it's not a bad radio. It is not a bad radio. We're going to talk a little more about it and once I reach the end of the chat room. Alex, I'm half an hour behind in the chat. Famous last words. Oh, man. RJ Dakota says he's got a love-hate relationship with his electric here. When I have power, it's all good. But if that power went out, I could hear everything. Yeah. But, I bet most of you are like me. When the power goes out, you're not like, oh, no power. What am I going to do tonight? We're all like, oh, no power. Let's turn on the radio and see what's on. I actually used my last time that the power went out for, I don't know, maybe an hour, a few weeks ago. I took my laptop on the battery. I plugged in the RSPDX in it, and I powered my MLA30 out of a power bank to recharge a phone. And I was thinking, like, this is cool. I have the perfect no power setup. The MLA30 is going to work for hours. Actually, the MLA30 is going to work for days with that power bank. But my new laptop battery is like, crazy long for a PC with Windows. It's like, 8 or 10 hours. So I was actually doing that, running SDR Uno, and I was like, so I could have, because once you run software and stuff, of course, it takes a lot of battery. But my laptop was saying, you got about 6 hours. And I was like, wow, I could have up to 6 hours of shortage of electricity and be able to tune around on my SDR with the MLA30 with this setup. This is kind of interesting. And there was, unfortunately, not a lot of difference, because here, to have a huge difference, the power has to go out everywhere. And I'm on a different circuit. I've noticed that quite a few times. When here, it actually goes dark. Usually on the other side of the street, it's also dark. But on the back, they all have electricity. So I'm on a different circuit than the street in the back. So I noticed that when that happens, no electricity, but in the back they have electricity, I have the same amount of noise, which tells me, okay, the noise doesn't come from here. It really comes from whatever's happening there. And the so it needs to be a bigger power outage for me to actually enjoy shortwave. But when it does, oh boy, this is so cool. But I'm one of those that's kind of happy when power goes out. Log 2112, nice to have you here. TVDXer, will your next QTH be more suburban, rural to factor in shortwave? I am a city guy, and I will probably always be a city guy. I have no interest in moving to a suburb. I want to live in the city. This is my life. I'm a city guy. I'm really a city guy. I want to be in the city. I love the city. I like the energy and the what's happening in the city. And it's so funny because I worked with a guy that lived in a very, very small town in Lanaudière. And when he worked with, we were working as a team. And I remember one day he said, "How can you live like this?" I said, "What? You live in the city. It's like I'm stressed out of everything here." And I said, "I'm not. It's life. It's the way it is. The traffic and the noise and it's like, yeah, I'm used to it. It's my life. I've been a city boy. I'm a city boy. So, and but so I don't want to, but if I would want to have a maybe something that I would like to have would be maybe a place up north, far from everything, where I could go to, bring the radios and like, I mean, I miss that a lot. I would go up north with my when my dad had his shack, and I mean that place was crazy. We didn't have electricity at that place. We would, there's a wood stove, and we would have the lanterns and stuff like that. We would cook our food either on the wood stove in the winter or on a fire outside in the summer, which I always found cool. And actually, you know what? That's all I need when I go out from the city. I don't need a big place with electricity, and give me just a little shack. And I don't care about electricity. I don't, I'll bring my own power for my stuff that I want. I did that for years when my dad had a shack anyways. I know how to handle all of that. That would be more the what I would like. Now, if I would move from here to some other place, it's hard to say. Would I choose place based on the noise level that I've got, or choose a place more on I just love this spot and I want to live here? And I think I just love this place and I want to live here would take over the hobby. I would want more, because why? Because I would probably make the compromise. So I'll take a chance. But if shortwave radio listening is impossible wherever I'm going, I'll take the portable radios with me and go to the park or go to Perry Island or, just do some stuff somewhere else, Um, Mongoose, yes, you are right. I was actually thinking of that yesterday, that I need to clean up this space here because it's getting all messy. Absolutely. Maniac DX, nice to have you on board. WA1089SWL from the Pine Tree State. Nice to have you here. And thanks for the nice comments. Keegan had a lot of FMDX. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Bruce Bernard, nice to have you here. Radioactive, nice to have you on board. Nice to see you again also from Oregon. Glenn Zenkman says, me and my wife got our shots back in March. Cool. Cool. KC8 TBY, nice to have you on board from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Once again, guys, I am right now 25 minutes. So I'm catching up. 25 minutes. Yeah, I know, Eric Cottrell. There, part of me was like a green wire is often a ground wire, but the problem is he was talking of a Sony TV or something. And I could not figure out there would be a green wire coming out of a Sony TV for some reason. But absolutely, a green wire is often a ground wire. Joe Tyson, nice to have you here from North Carolina, KM4WRQ. Dirty Diaper 21, nice to have you here. In South Carolina, nice to have you on board. And what else do we have? Yes, I am enjoying my Don't It's You TVDXer. Well, Hisla, for high noise QTH, I can recommend that $5 US low noise amplifier you can find on AliExpress or eBay. Mount it on a loop of wire and even random wire, and may dig up some signals. Alan Handelman Show. Nice to have you here from Charlotte, North Carolina. John Ershaw. Same thing happened with Radio Netherlands and Radio Tirana. Radio Tirana is actually on WRMI. They are on WRMI right now. For those that don't know, Radio Tirana is relayed. M0JFE. Nice to have you here. Keegan plans to be a radio operator someday. Radioactive is W7WXV in Prineville, Oregon. Cool. John Ershaw collects radio computers also. Cool. Radioactive has Radio New Zealand's carrier here on 13840. Bobby Berg has got the 2 shots of Moderna. Cool. Stephen Brett, nice to have you here. Says great show. Thank you very much. Jerry, was there a 54-year-old lady from Quebec that got a blood clot from the COVID shot? She could have had, yeah. Actually, from the AstraZeneca vaccine, there were 4 people total that suffered some form of blood clots, but it's a 1 in 100,000 chance, which is there's a lot of stuff that we do every day that actually gives you more chance of having health problems. And they just said, well, the protection you get from COVID actually far outweighs the danger. Carol Potch, nice to have you here. Yes, I got the AstraZeneca one. Robert Prosper, in New York, the issue is changing from insufficient vaccine for those who want them to insufficient enthusiasm for the vaccine on the part of those yet to be vaccinated. Yeah, that's going to be the problem. When you when we will get there. We will get to a point, because right now it's everybody's enthusiastic here too. They've had some they've opened up a few days last week where it's like no need for an appointment, just show up. And there were lines, real huge lines to get vaccinated. People really wanted to. But I'm afraid that at some point we're going to be at the point where there's tons of vaccines available. No one wants to get them. And, there's a minimum amount of people that needs to get vaccinated for this to work well. And that's going to be the complicated thing. So, Keegan is vaccinated. Cool. David found it. The live show from the kitchen. I could have done a shortwave cooking show. It's like, while we are listening to Voice of Korea, let's make some dumplings. Come Magazine 1976. Nice to have you here from West Michigan. JD Dakota says 5085 WTWW is blasting. What else do we have? Try to get John Ersha is hearing over the horizon radar on 7185. Radioactive says Vermont QSO party and S1 DX calling on 14270.7. And 6 RLS got Pfizer 3 weeks apart. My second is May 13th. Loose talk here about needing vaccinated passports to do things. There's a lot of that talking about that here. Actually, there was a newspaper reporter that said, okay, how about we get that vaccination passport? And this summer, if you want to go to a bar, enjoy a beer, if you want to go to see a movie, if you want to go to a restaurant, how about if you don't have that, forget it. Because he's the kind of guy saying, well, I'm tired of all the people that will not get vaccinated and that will enjoy regular life for all of us that actually did get vaccinated. So there's a lot of talk about that here. But the government is kind of, I'm not sure I want to go there. So, JRDX got a video removed with a warning from WWCR Nashville. InfoWars, I guess the content was, well, yeah. And be careful about that, because the content that gets removed because of that, you get strikes. And if you get 3, your channel is going to be taken down. You got to be very careful. I actually had a strike on my tech channel because I was talking about all the scams going on with text messaging and emails with COVID. And they thought I was talking about COVID when I was actually just educating people to be careful with all the scams going on. I had to actually to appeal to get the strikeout. They took it out, but I had to appeal. Martin, PE9 TIG, behind you, Realistic Pro 2006. Yes, absolutely, right here. Still in good working order, actually. The secret new stuff is secret new stuff. I cannot say anything else. It's secret new stuff. Eric Cottrell. Oh, Shell is under a non-disclosure agreement. Disclosure agreement. Yep. So it's kind of nice to see stuff, though. I got to tell you that. View to a kill, JRTX says. License to DX. That should be the next James Bond movie. License to DX. Charles Williams had both Pfizer shots in February. Joseph Richard, good afternoon. Sorry, I'm late. Was listening to the BBC out of England. So you're correct. This Texan PL660, very good for my first radio. Absolutely. Great radio. Great radio. Yes, I will get at the end of the chat room. Dr. Sisup, nice to have you on board. And I'll do that in not long. I'm actually 15 minutes behind now. Neil says, for your eyes only, yes, Bond movie. I've always been weak for Sheena Easton. Kill King, nice to have you here. Steve, I found SMA Y-cord on Amazon and plan to use one MLA30 antenna with 2 radios. Do you think radio interaction will prevent good performance? It all depends on the radios. Here, when I did that, some radios together were fine, but some radios had problems. So, Robert Prosper, how much did you pay, including shipping, for your PL330? Oh boy, let me just check that out. Let me go here and check it out. eBay. So, my eBay, my PL330, my PL330. PL330. Let's just let me just check. More than 60 days. 2021. Okay. What do I have here? Just checking out what. Quickly, I can't find it. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly how much I paid for it. Because mine was purchased from China. No unpaid items. Oh. Purchase history. Quickly, I can't find it. I'm trying to remember. 330. I probably paid something like 80-ish, 85-ish Canadian dollars. Something like that. 85 to 90-ish Canadian dollars, which would bring the price to US dollars as maybe 65 to 70 US dollars, shipping included. Something like that. But I'm not sure. 3D effects, Estrella Galcia. Nice to have you here, Estrella. Bernie Dodge, nice to have you here from San Diego, KD1BD. Batty Boo, are you able to receive slow scan TV from the Texan PL660 or XH Data D808 over mobile application Robot 360 over wire antenna? And what do you think about 4625 kilohertz buzzer? Nice to have you here from Czech Republic. Yes, I have. I have done some slow scan TV decoding using various portable receivers and Robot 36. Usually works well as long as it's very quiet. And 4625, well, it's that Russian signal that's mysterious and keeps us all talking about it. Not much more to talk about. Dr. Sisop, no, I'm not moving. We were talking if I would be moving, but I'm not moving. DX, as my lawyer, has all the online legal documentation. Sign over all your radios for me. Jill is a city slicker. I wish either Radio Shack or something like Radio Shack, but like it was back then, was around. You know, the because I mean there were bad electronics in the day, but I got to say that I miss the good old days of those Radio Shacks and stuff, and having all the, because I mean the cheap stuff at Radio Shack in the 80s for me was not as cheap as the cheap stuff we get today, even though it was cheap stuff. Robert Prosper is missing Heathcliff. Carl Icon as Voice of America 6195 coming good. Alan Allied Radio, Lafayette Electronics. Yep. TVDXer. Things are interesting. I choose my current QTH as a compromise between life and the hobby. Okay. I'm kind of a guy that wants to live well, and living well, what I mean by that is have a nice apartment or a nice place that suits my comfort, what I like, what I want, my style of life, if you want. And unfortunately, that type of want is not necessarily in very good standing with the hobby of shortwave radio or amateur radio. I would be the guy, to give you an idea, I'd be the guy living at, in a downtown apartment complex or condo at the 40th floor. I'd be a happy camper right downtown Montreal. I'm a real city guy, I tell you that. Although I live where I live here in Rosemont, which is kind of on the edge, and the street here looks much more like a suburb than anything else, and I like it. I love this place here, and I'm not moving from here unless really there would be something major happening. Joe Gomez, nice to have you here, my friend. What else do we have? Just trying to catch up. Try to get closer to the bottom of the chat. So, radioactive, have you thought about putting up a delta loop antenna in the backyard? Maybe from telephone pole to tree to balcony. Might be interesting how reception would differ with the MLA30. Right now, I don't have a lot of plans for the backyard, but it could be interesting to see what would be possible. For sure. For sure. I need to check it out. Charity X, hate to see Joe buried alive from a tsunami of radios. I like that. A tsunami of radios. Yeah, I know. There's been blood clot issues with other vaccines also. Danny Shortwave Radio DX, nice to have you here from Yonkers, New York. Danny Shortwave says, same here in Yonkers, New York. No appointment necessary. Just walk in to get the vaccine. Alex says, Europe has the solution to not wanting the vaccination. You cannot attend stuff or travel if you do not have Corona passport. Hirofumi Yokoyama, good morning. Nice to have you on board from Japan. And that is a total lie, Jared DX. He's not getting any money off of a vaccine. It's his It is I forgot the name how you call it, but it's his the investment he made was from his philanthropic stuff. There's so much bull and crazy bad lies coming out of stuff like that with Bill Gates and stuff. It's just crazy. Bruce Bernard says, Radio Gel cooking show, how to make smoked meat and get great Canadian beer. We are now listening to CFRX Toronto on 6070, and we will now cook the perfect grilled cheese, Canadian style. I'm getting hungry now. Alan Hendenman show. As I mentioned last week in the chat, I sent back the ATS 909X2 version 070. 2 days later, I got a replacement with firmware 073. Noticed a 10 to 15% increase in SSB volume. Will you review 073? Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of videos on the one I have with 070, and I will then be contacting to send it back to have it upgraded and get 073, and then I will be talking about what improvements of 073 that I see. But the SSB capability of the CNGN is actually, yes, a low volume. Dr. Sisop, if your channel gets taken down, you have to make a new one, pain in the butt. Yeah, it's even worse than that because YouTube has very, as a very strict thing, is that if you have one channel taken down, they kind of don't want you to have another one. Well, YouTube is getting strict because they're just looking at their own ass. They just want to make sure that they don't get sued for something because of a user doing something. Broad skilling PL330 from Anonco was $71.44, including shipping to Chicago. Not bad. I mean, for a radio, that radio is just so amazing. Dan, nice to have you on board from Ohio and 8WJZ. Where are the damn sunspots? Well, there are quite a few this week. There are a lot of little sunspots group. It's surprising, but we're kind of ranting at the sunspot cycle. But right now, cycle 25 is actually rising faster than expected. So that gives you an idea. But the problem is, and that's what they're saying, is when a cycle is a small cycle, it takes a long time to really start up well. René Charbonnier, nice to have you on board from the Netherlands. Niels, where did I order my Texan PL368? I see that Anonco does not yet have it on its website. I think it seems to be a nice radio, an ultra portable radio. I got it from a Chinese seller on eBay. Simple as that. I took a chance, and actually it works fine. I don't really see any glitches, so it seems to work really, really well. But it's soon to be, in about a month's time, within the next month, Anonco should have it. And Connicom in the US, for those that want to buy it from a US company, Connicom in California is going to have it as the Connicom GP7 SSB. The Connicom version will have some improvements on it. So it will not be exactly like the Texan PL368 when it comes out. We have let me just try to get down here. Robert Osborne was getting some good skip earlier in the CB radio band, but it's gone now. Danny Shortwave says our local micro center has a section that has electronic stuff. Not bad. Reminds of the old Radio Shack stuff. Here I am lucky. I have a store called Addison Electronics on not very far from here. And what is interesting is that what's interesting is that it has that interesting feel of electronics, but it changed over time. It's not like it was when I was when I was a teenager. I remember back then they had tons of boxes with circuit boards, and I would buy these circuit boards for like $3, and they had they were selling them for parts only, but they had chips and they had LED numeric displays, and they had all sorts of things. And I remember having fun trying to power them up and seeing if I can get something working out of them. I had so much fun with that, and there's so much stuff in there, and it was just crazy. I remember back then there were rows of capacitors and resistors, and I mean they still sell some most of them today. But the problem is, these are small parts. It was like going in a candy store. You could actually go and pick up 5 1 kiloohm resistors, put them in a little bag, and that you would go and pay your 5 resistors. And I would go there a lot because that, to give you an idea of the difference, so that's an electronics surplus store. I did a lot of electronics, little electronics projects when I was a teen and early adult. I would never buy parts at Radio Shack because, for example, if I needed a transistor, like a 2N2222, which is a very popular one. So if I would get a 2N2222, it was, like at Radio Shack, they would sell it for like, $5.99 for one. It was $6 for one transistor. But at Addison Electronics, a bag of 10 2N2222 was 99 cents. So it's like, yeah, I'm not going to get screwed by Radio Shack. This place has much better prices. And even today, for parts, it's still a decent place for parts. And so I would purchase all this stuff there. I would, Radio Shack would be my last resort. Okay, I need this part, and Radio Shack is the only one that's got it, because I knew that they were all the time, very high priced. But it's still there today. It's changed, it's more mainstream today, but there's still a lot of stuff and interesting stuff in there. They still have kits, little kits, electronic kits and stuff to buy. They have, some interesting little things to check out. Dig off the dump. YouTube throw me in your face. My face only had a CB radio. Does shortwave still kick? Yeah, pretty much, but it's different for sure. Brian Penny, nice to have you on board from Cape Cod. Just him and his Belka. Sergio Cordero, have you tried or do you have an opinion of the Newelec Balun 9.1? I'm thinking of connecting it to my random wire. So a 9-to-1 might improve your radio listening. It really depends. It really depends of your setup. And don't be too excited because it might also have absolutely no effect. It really depends. I have one 9-to-1 here. And with or without it, I see no difference. But some people have it and say they see a huge difference and huge improvement when they add one. So, the best thing to do is to try it. Joseph Nusser, Rosemont is a wonderful neighborhood. I wouldn't leave it either if I had put down roots there. It is a very beautiful place in town. Brian Powell, VK2XBP. Nice to have you on board. And pretty cool to have you here from the other side of the world. Um, what else do we have? Like I said, Ramon Samson. Ramon Samson. Nice to have you here from British Columbia. The spectrum on your monitor must be your RSPDX. Yeah, it's the RSPDX in the background here. Absolutely, from the SDR play. Arthur's Alleycrafter's Kitchen. Nice to have you on board from Massachusetts. TVDXer Schwartz Daily in Montreal. It's great sandwiches. I haven't been there in, I think last time I've been to Schwartz was at least 20 years ago, if not more. Robert Prosper says there's some in Washington who wants to see YouTube and Amazon be treated as common carriers that are not permitted to censor, same as phone companies. Yeah, here they're even thinking of, here the Canadian government is thinking of trying to do regulation on how YouTube works. It's like, why don't you just leave it alone? I mean, I don't know. Crazy. Brad Skilling, Anonco also still has the PL600. That was tempting too. About the same price. Yeah, it's a different radio. I mean, it's it's not a DSP based radio. It's a good old analog PLL digital receiver. It's nice. The only drawback of the PL600 that I would say is the harsh audio that it has, but there are mods that you can do on the internet to fix it if you want to open up the radio and have a better sound. Charity X is thinking of smashing the piggy bank for a PL330. Oh yeah, Nonco is great. Absolutely. IZ0KBA. Nice to have you on board. From Italy. Keegan says farthest cache on April 26th, KEDT, Corpus Christi, Texas, on 90.3. Canadian radio TV guy, nice to have you here from Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. Looks like you solved a stream issue you were having. Yeah, well, actually, I haven't solved anything, as YouTube had a problem. I kind of wondered, somebody mentioned in a private message saying, interesting how the U.S. government is having a state address on tonight, and YouTube streaming is broken. And I was like, okay, now that you mention it, I just sparked my curiosity that it's a weird coincidence, but who knows? Who knows? Question for everybody out there: what would be the better antenna for the PL660 than the one that came in the box? Every time somebody asks about what would be a better antenna, I always say start with a wire outdoors, see how it improves if it does. If not, I would just stick an MLA30 loop antenna on that thing, and that works great with it. I have a PL680 here, and I've used the MLA30 on it quite a few times. Pretty good. Together, they're killer combination, especially if it's noisy where you are. Rufus says, I work for a Radio Shack dealer, and I was not obligated to buy parts from them. I bought bulk from different suppliers and sold them much cheaper to my customers. Yeah. Does the supermoon reflect more noise than a regular moon face to the planet? Kill King 110. A supermoon is a little bigger, but it's not that big. The difference isn't that huge. So the effects of whatever it could do, or have as an effect or interference or whatever, would be pretty much difficult to really assess or see any, if any. Uh, Peter Rasmussen, nice to have you on board from Denmark. OZ5 PET, pretty cool. Nice to have you on board, my friend. Niels, thanks for the info about Texan PL 368 and upcoming CountyCom. Looking around a bit now on the eBay. Yeah, an Onco will have the PL 368 soon. It's not that far from being released. I almost, but I thought, nah, you're crazy. You shouldn't do that. But boy, I was looking at the Texan H501X, the export version of the Texan H501. I almost felt like purchasing one to test out and talk about. I got to say. Take care, Tom DXer. Have a good, some good kitchen time there. Are you guys finding a 22-meter band tonight? Lots of interference here in Niagara Falls. Nice to have you on board, Glenn. KB9N. Jerry X. You should move to a nice cabin up in Laurentian. Imagine the reception you would get on top of a mountain. Make sure you're well grounded, though. Lightning, ouch. Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. Absolutely. But that would be my shack in the north. Not I would still be living in the city. Danny Shortwave Radio DX. Think Biden's speech slowed down YouTube that evening. It's possible. Vladislav says a 9-to-1 balance can work. Depends on the radio and antenna. It is cheap, worth to try. Yeah, just for the. I mean, it costs nothing almost. So, absolutely, it totally is worth trying. And if you're even a little tech side, if you're a little techie, you can even build one yourself. RTM, nice to have you on board. Tristan, the push for more censorship is very disturbing, but it will come around and impact the people calling for censorship today. Yeah. It's something very delicate, that's for sure. No, conditions last night were a pretty amazing, Canadian Radio TV guy, because I rarely hear pirates, so many pirates, with good signals at the same time. Pirates are usually low powered, so when they get on, depending on the frequency they use, if there's 3 or 4 of them, I'm lucky if I can hear 1 or 2. But yesterday, every pirate that popped up, I could hear really well at my location. And I was like, wow, conditions are really amazing. I'm getting all of them. So conditions, yes, they seemed pretty good last night. Let's hope that the band conditions continue in the same way tonight. It was really, really nice. Christian Ferland, salut. Can you explain the Cycle 25? Because I'm confused about what is the advantage of it for some DXers and not for some others. Okay. A little solar cycle propagation 101. So first, let's start with the basics. Shortwave signals propagate because they bounce off a layer of the atmosphere very high up called the ionosphere that acts as a mirror. It's like a mirror for radio waves that are in the shortwave range. That ionosphere has a certain density and a certain size. And it changes with the solar activity because what creates that layer is solar radiation. It ionizes that area of the atmosphere. So when the cycle goes up and down every 11 years on average, the ionosphere is more or less ionized. So less or more dense, less or more thick, and will reflect certain frequencies better than others, depending on how much it is dense. So at the bottom of the solar cycle, in general, there's not a lot of solar radiation. We're kind of there now. There's not a lot. The solar flux is barely, has a hard time getting above 80. To give you guys an idea, the solar flux, when you read that on a website, it can go from 60 is the minimum roughly, which is what scientists think, and 400 at the highest. Now, as a guy that I've watched solar cycles from the 80s, I still remember listening to WWV mentioning that solar flux was 353. So it gives you an idea. 353. Imagine that, guys. We barely have an 80, 80 or 90, and we're all hyped up. Imagine 350. So one indication, and it's not just the only indication, because there's a lot. It's a more complex interaction than that. But one basic indication is that the amount of activity on the sun and the density of the ionosphere will go with roughly the solar flux that you see. So the solar flux, it's measured by listening to the sun. It's actually very simple. The solar flux is a measure of the amount of noise received from the sun in the 2 gigahertz range. Because there's kind of a correlation of the more noise there is in that range from the sun, the more active it is. And it usually goes pretty much together. The more sunspots there are, the more activity there is. The more noise there is in 2 gigahertz, the higher the solar flux, the more energy is actually ionizing the ionosphere. What are the advantages of being in a high or a low solar cycle? First of all, if I have one thing that I'm extremely tired of hearing all the time, is people complaining that, oh, we're on the bottom part of solar cycle, so propagation is going to be crap and there's nothing to listen to. That is a lack of knowledge of what shortwave propagation is all about. You don't know what you're talking about when you say that. I always say that some of the best DX I've ever had was always done at low solar activity, at the minimum of the cycles. There's always something out there, but there's a definite change of what frequencies you might want to listen to depending on the top part or the bottom part. One of the advantages of a high solar cycle of solar maximum is that because the sun is very active, it sends more energy, the ionosphere is denser, higher frequencies will propagate. Like the 10-meter band that people complain that it's dead all the time. Well, in the peak of the solar cycle, 10 meters, because the ionosphere can support 28 megahertz in propagation. And so that is a big advantage of a solar cycle peak, is that high frequencies will propagate better. We can kind of say that in general, above 15 megahertz gets better as we go into higher solar flux and higher activity on the sun. So you might hear the 19-meter band with signals that are stronger, more stable. 16-meter band, 17 megahertz. Same for the 13 and 15 amateur radio bands, 21 megahertz. And of course, all the way up to 30 megahertz, the 10-meter band at 28, 29 megahertz. So a peak of solar activity will give more activity on the higher frequencies. Overall, giving you more to listen to because there's more frequencies open for listening. Um, in the nighttime, it might also help because the ionosphere might stay ionized more. So some frequencies in the nighttime that have a hard time with the low maximum usable frequency might actually be working well because of a ionosphere that has more ionization. So there are advantages in that sense. But there are frequency ranges that are pretty much not affected by that. And one is 49 meter band, 6 megahertz. In general, if you look at, the 80 meter band, the amateur 80 meter band at 3 megahertz, 4 megahertz, 5 megahertz, 6 megahertz, 49, uh, you'll see that there's not a lot of difference between a high or a low peak of activity. These are frequencies that are less affected. One disadvantage of a high, or a couple of disadvantages of high solar activity. A more active sun will also mean a noisier sun. Part of the noise we hear on the shortwave bands sometimes comes from the sun itself. And high, being at a peak of solar cycle, can induce higher noise on certain frequencies. Um, Also, people that DX medium wave, people that DX very low frequencies, often will tell you, well, it's not as good in a high part of the solar cycle as it is when we're at minimum, solar minimum. Long wave, medium wave seems to react better at solar minimum. So if you add solar minimum winter time, that's kind of killer conditions for long wave, medium wave. If you had high solar activity, higher frequencies are going to be there, and there's going to be more signals because all the bands, all the frequency range where you usually hear nothing because it's not supported by the ionosphere is suddenly going to propagate. So high and low peaks of solar cycles each have advantages, disadvantages. But I will repeat it. High and low peaks of solar activity are over, like a solar maximum is kind of over hyped. It is nice. It adds frequency ranges that I love, like the 10 meter band. But when somebody says, well, there's no DX or a solar minimum, so you don't know what you're talking about and you don't know what frequency ranges to use. There's DX all the time, whether on the top or the bottom of the cycle. We got to stop thinking about that in terms of solar activity. Because I see a lot of people, oh, well, conditions are crappy. We're at the minimum of a solar cycle. No. And I'll add to that, and I talked about it in the past, in a few weeks ago. I suspect a lot of people think the bands are dead because of the solar cycle being the solar minimum, when in reality, they might not just realize that they have a lot more noise than they used in the past, which makes it just more difficult to listen to something. So that's kind of a quick rundown. It's more complex than that. There's a lot more interactions. Solar maximum has solar flares. Solar flares are one of those things that is not necessarily the best for propagation because you can have a solar flare wipe out the bands. Just look at this week. We had a few C flares, which are very small flares. Very small is very relative for the sun. But when there's a solar flare, it sends out particles that reach the Earth about 8 minutes, go at speed of light, 8 minutes later, that actually suppress the ionosphere. So when you get a solar flare, Earth-directed solar flare, the Earth side that is on the sun side of the Earth is often losing propagation on shortwave because that solar flare, the particles sent out, actually destroy the ionosphere. And you end up having signals just disappear for a few minutes, or up to a few hours, depending on how big the flare is. It's the time that it takes for the ionosphere to actually reconstruct itself. So you could be listening to a signal in the sunlit side of Earth. So you're listening to something in the afternoon. It's a nice sunny day. Solar flare hits. What's going to happen? That signal you're listening to, 8 minutes, because it goes at the speed of light. The first wave is at the speed of light. 8 minutes into the flare, you're going to have a shortwave fade out, and signal is going to like disappear in a short amount of time. And that's the first effect of a solar flare. Then it's going to reconstruct itself. The second effect of a solar flare, depending of if it sends out some coronal mass ejections, which is clouds of gas, basically, or plasma, charged particles. That's the second effect that can happen, is it's going to hit our geomagnetic field, and that can create geomagnetic storms. That also often suppresses the ionosphere and shortwave signals. So there's a lot of interaction depending on the top and the bottom part. So depending on what you like and what you listen to, some people love the maximum solar cycle because they can use some of the bands like 10 meters. And others like the bottom part because they want to DX long wave, medium wave signals. So depending on what you listen to, you might want to listen at the top or the bottom of the cycle. I'm one of the guys that likes, kind of a higher cycle because in general, what I listen to in the bottom frequencies is not impacted. So at night, 49 meters, stuff like that is still working well. But it adds the capability of more signals on the high frequency ranges. And an example that I give of a signal that will help, solar cycle will help. So in the summer this year, Radio New Zealand has chosen 15720, pretty high frequency. And what happens is that in the summertime here, we hear Radio New Zealand in the evening because most of the pad is still daylight. So we can actually hear that. But last year they were using 13840, which was very good. This year, 15720, if we keep the same solar activity as last year, which was very low, it's going to be a hard one on the East Coast because not all of that signal is going to come in. But if we do have a little more activity on the sun, the ionosphere is going to be denser. That 15720 frequency is actually going to be stronger for us. So higher solar activity might mean better reception of 15720, for example. So, there's some advantages, that's for sure. Hey, Minky Delmage, nice to have you here from Sherwood Park, Alberta. Oh yeah, pirates last night. There were tons of pirates last night for sure. Pirate on 6925. Let's check it out here. I haven't checked HF Underground. Let's check it out here. That's on HF Underground right now. 2133 6970 AM 6970. Let's check it out here. Anything here? Let's just put it here. I wasn't placed well. 6970 AM mode. Not seeing anything in the 6 megahertz range right now, but I suspect that tonight there's going to be some stuff to listen to for pirates for sure. Pretty sure. Okay, let's go back here. Mark Cope, 353 solar flux. Wow, I hope I see that at some point. Yep, those were the big cycles back in the 80s and 90s. It was so crazy. it's hard to imagine we're at, barely capable of getting at 80 when actually there is some solar flux going at 300, past 300 at some point. PDXRS4, Portland, Oregon. Nice to have you here. Jerry DX, yeah. Some of them are so big that at sunset, when the sun sets, you can actually see some of the. Even though you don't, you should never look at the sun. It's you can see them with your naked eye. Tristan, so higher solar flux means much better daytime listening. But once again, we got to be careful, because at noon or 1 p.m., it's not going to be much better. There's a lot of absorption around the high peak of the sun. When the sun is at its highest point in the sky in the daytime around noon, there's a lot of absorption going on also on the shortwave and the ionosphere. So it's not the best time. But late afternoon and evening, it definitely can improve, especially in the higher frequencies. Niels Pedersen, yes, the Texan H501 is an interesting radio. Yep, absolutely. Radioactive, says ISS crew. One hatch closing and undocking today. Too bad we can't listen in. Yeah. What else do we have? Ronald, nice to have you here. Thank you for the explanation of how reception works via the sun. I really get so sick of people who think you can't hear anything. Medium wave DXing rocks at 80, no doubt about it. Yeah, absolutely. Blind Picker saying all the best to our friends in India dealing with COVID disaster. Yes, absolutely. We've got to have our little moments of and think about what's happening in the world for sure. Mobile Armored Strike Command Space Weather Prediction Center was very valuable and interesting articles about and data about the sun. Yep, spaceweather.com is very, very good also in checking out all the details and kind of explaining it down to earth way. So Christian fill out things are interesting and helps me a lot. Yeah. It's not always easy to try to understand why, what are these guys talking about solar cycles? What the hell does it have to do with my radio? What does the sun have to do? Because that's the first thing that probably most listeners will say is, what the hell does the sun have to do with my radio? Cool AM radio. Nice to have you on board, my friend. Yes, the stream is functioning today. Normando Marcolongo from Italy. Nice to have you on board. Mobile Armored Strike Command. Everybody should read this article, Solar Activity in Age of Propagation. Sometimes it's just better to have it explained in a basic way by people also. It depends on everybody. Not everyone is technical to a point where reading some technical, solar activity info is necessarily easy. So when you can have somebody explain it in some way, it's also nice. Todd, nice to have you on board from Southwest South Dakota. Pretty cool. Brad Skilling says AM DXing mentioned. I'm new to shortwave, but will say that the C Crane EP Pro changed my whole perception of how many stations I could find. Yeah, it is known as one of the best medium wave or AM radios for long distance listening out there for sure. I have so Cool AM Radio says not soon, only as over Horizon Offshore History Radio via channel 292. Cool. Tristan says, how is the PL330 reception on medium wave with its ability to use external antenna for medium wave? I haven't done it yet. I need to check that out. That would be a nice series of videos for sure. Checking it out with external antenna. That's for sure. So really, really nice. So it's cool, you know, and that's one of the things we got to understand, because when things go bad, sometimes we, sometimes we are kind of wondering, why is it, why is propagation bad today? What's happening? How do we explain this? And a lot of it has to do with solar activity. The sun has a tremendous impact on the ionosphere, and depending on what it does, it actually is going to be definitely one of those things to look at. That's for sure. And it doesn't take a lot that's happening on the sun to change everything from the 1 minute to the next. One of the great stories that I like to explain is the last time we had a really major solar flare that created like really, really strong auroras that would be seen here in Montreal. It was somewhere in 2004-ish, and actually we had in the International Radio Report, we had a talk on that. What was it, last week, 2 weeks ago? We talked about that solar storm of 2004. And or 2000, I think it's 2004. And I was listening to Shortwave that night. The sun had a huge X flare. So solar flares on the sun are in categories. We have the C flares, are the smallest, the B flares that are bigger, the M flares, which are even bigger, and then we cross into the X flares. These are really major flares. When you hear of an X flare, that's a major event happening on the sun. And you want to read more, because an X flare is so huge that it can do surprising things. Look at in 1989 when the power grid collapsed because of a solar flare, a solar storm, and that was an X flare. That's actually two. If I remember well, it was two X flares very close together, and one paved the way for the other one to do the maximum amount of damage. That I remember that night. So I don't remember the exact time, but I believe it was like April, or I think it was like in late March or April of 2004. So I'm listening to Shortwave that night, and I'm listening to some signal, like back then there was a few stations from Europe that don't exist anymore, like Radio Prague was direct from there. But I remember listening to a signal, and that signal, and I think it took like 2 minutes, went from full scale on my S meter to totally gone. It wasn't there anymore. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? So I started tuning around, and I noticed every signal from Europe that I could hear usually were all gone, non-existent. I remember I tuned to Radio Havana, Cuba on 6,000 kilohertz, because they were using that frequency back then still. Even Radio Havana, Cuba was faded. It was there very weak. And I thought, for a moment, I didn't understand. For a moment, I was like, what's happening? What's happening? And after about a minute or two, I thought, wait a minute, there must be some major disturbance happening. And as that was happening, we were actually the shock of the cloud of plasma from that X flare had hit the geomagnetic field of the Earth and compressed it a lot, and actually degraded shortwave propagation terribly. I went outside, and the first thing that I noticed, and it was like, I don't know, 10 p.m. I looked outside, I looked up. To see auroras in Montreal, they have to be extremely bright because of light pollution. Auroras were everywhere in the sky here, everywhere. And I thought, man, this is major. And I called my brother. I called a friend that lived up north. And I still remember my friend called me the next day to tell me, thank you so much, because me and my wife were amazed at what we saw in the sky that night. But it was the first time I was at the forefront, at the live moment of a CMA just arrived, and it actually degraded shortwave, and aurora borealis are everywhere, and it was one of the major events of that time. And I remember watching the aurora borealis a big part of the evening before they started slowly fading away. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, what can happen. Happy birthday, Robert. Absolutely. KW1161. Nice to have you on board from Tucson, Arizona. And happy birthday, Robert Cross. Abutieri. I use a free AirSpy SDR. Is there one that has direct frequency entry? Also, I have a PL990X and PL680 from Anonco. Thank you for all the great reviews and information. Well, the AirSpy SDR is you can just type in, depends on what software you're using. If you're using SDR console, just put your mouse pointer and click in the waterfall, and you can actually punch in a frequency you want to hear, you want to listen to on your keyboard. So you can type 6.180 and enter. You do have direct frequency entry. Depends on the software you use, though. Each software is different. Kevin Wood, nice to have you here from Nova Scotia. Take care, Nils. Always nice to have you on board, my friend from Sweden. And always read your comments, even on the tech channel. Thank you so much for being there. Canadian Radio TV guy, PL330 medium wave performance, great on external antenna, in my opinion. Seems to work great with the long wire. Too quiet on the MLA30. So cool. KW1161 just received the Malachite radio about an hour ago, and it's on my first charge. Cool. Have fun, man. You're going to have fun with that for sure. Glenn, tell the crew a little about E-layer and sporadic E propagation. So, you guys want to talk more about propagation? You want to learn a little more about all of this and the ionosphere itself? We're going to continue. I got no problem with that. If everybody's okay with that, let's talk more about it, and maybe some of you will learn a little more information about it. PD K9 Captain, nice to have you here. Michael Hancock on Facebook, nice to have you here. And Kevin Woods says, got the Lee Valley Spring Gardening catalog today. They are listing a Texan portable. Oh, wow. Okay. KW1161, I was in the midst of a critical test at work when that happened. I had to restart a 5-hour test over. Youch. Yeah, we don't often talk about the with flares, but oh yeah, the Earth's magnetic field is huge. It's not as big as the one on Jupiter, but it's pretty. It goes pretty far in space, absolutely. And I mean, we need it because it protects us quite a lot. Justin says, bring on more propagation. Undecided hobbies. I use an old Panasonic RF2200 for listening to shortwave. Great old receiver. It's an amazing little receiver. Well, an amazing big receiver, but it's great. You hear on that thing pretty much everything we hear on more modern receivers. Can tell you that. The other thing is that Dow Jones, nice to have you here. The other thing about propagation is that there's all sorts of weird propagation phenomena happening. One of them that unfortunately a lot of ham seems to not really understand, because how many times I've heard amateur radio operators saying, oh, well, solar minimum, the next time the 10-meter band is going to be open is in 5 years. And you immediately understand that they, once again, are ignorant of what can make 10 meters open. 10 meters can open at any time, even in the middle of the night. And so that happens with something else called sporadic E-skip. And sporadic E-skip is a very unique way of propagation. It's, once again, the ionosphere, but it involves patches of very dense ionization that can happen. Now, a lot of it seems to happen with weather patterns. So when a cold front or a warm front goes through and there's thunderstorms and the line of thunderstorms, in that vicinity, very often you start seeing 10 meters or even 6 meters, 50 megahertz open, even all the way up to the FM band that our friend Keegan is listening to, XN80XR. And that will propagate signals in very high frequencies for a long distance by bouncing them off from that very strong ionized patch. And there are periods of the year that are more that will have that happen more often. One of them is early summer, when we reach June 21st, June, July. That area seems to be one of the best in the year for that happening. The next, in the wintertime, there's also kind of a moment where around December 21st, early January, there's also that time where it could happen. But it can happen at any time of the year. And when that happens, it actually literally lights up the bands. That's why, I always say, go and tune that range of frequencies that you hear nothing. Even if you've done it 100 times in the past 2 months and did not hear one signal, go back regularly. You will be surprised at someday you're going to punch in and tune in, and you're like, hey, there's something to listen to here. Sporadic E-skip being something that can happen at any time means the 10-meter band, for example, 28 megahertz, or even the 11-meter band or CB band can light up with activity suddenly at any time of day or night. I remember hearing, tons of hams operating on 10 meters at midnight. It's something that when it happens, it happens. It can happen for a few minutes, a few hours. I've seen it happen like a full day easily. I've seen it happen a couple of days in a row, sometimes. And that is an amazing thing to do. I used that in the 90s, even in the 80s, late 80s, without knowing it was that. DXing analog TV channels, because they were propagating, and I remember still seeing channel 4 from Alabama on my TV with just rabbit ears, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. 6 meters can open when that happens, because when e-skip happens, it could be so dense that you will actually have signals from much higher frequencies than just the shortwave spectrum propagate. A great example that I have is 2 memorable moments that I had. One is, last year or the year before? I think it was last year, receiving Brazil on 50 megahertz. And 2 or 3 years ago, receiving Mexico. Gives you an idea of how amazing this can be when it happens. So that's why, whatever time of day, whatever day of the year, you should always go and tune and see if there's something. One trick, 27025. Why? Because that's what's called the Super Bowl channel on the CB band. It's actually channel 6 of the CB band. This is the frequency where all the big gun kilowatt CBers are all waiting for sporadic e-skip to happen to start chatting along. And so when you post yourself on 27025, when that lights up, when sporadic e-skip happens, it doesn't take long that tons of CBers pop up from all over. For example, here, I'll hear all over the US or the East Coast or the south part of the US. When that happens, sporadic e-skip happened. And that means 10 meters is open. That means maybe 6 meters is open. There's a lot about that. The other thing is that the ionosphere is broken down in different layers. So you got to remember that in the daytime, the ionosphere is in general F1, F2 layer that's very high, that supports higher frequencies. But there's a D layer that still exists, and that D layer is absorbing. If you ever wonder, why does a signal on 6 megahertz propagate so well at night and not in the daytime? So here we listen to, say, Radio Romania 7375, 41 meters at 0 UT. It's coming in super well. But that same transmission, if it would be done at noon, would not make it. Why is that? Why is it that that frequency at noon just doesn't work? And it has to do with the configuration of the ionosphere. It has layers, and these layers will impact the frequency you're going to use. So at night, usually the ionosphere kind of mixes into one big layer that has a certain density that changes over height. That layer works great on lower frequencies. It's that layer that gives you medium wave propagation. That's why you're listening to Europe on medium wave, because that layer bounces off even medium wave, very low frequencies. And that's what's propagating 7375 from Radio Romania at 0 UT in the darkness. That main layer supports low frequencies. And depending on how ionized it can be. Sometimes it supports a little higher frequencies, and we might go up to 9 or 10 megahertz or 11 megahertz in high solar activity. But in the daytime, the layers separate, and you get a D layer at the bottom. You get an F1, F2 layer at the top. The F1 and F2 layers are the ones that are propagating the high frequencies, 15 megahertz, 17 megahertz, is in those high layers. But the D layer that formed at the bottom blocks a certain amount of frequencies. It absorbs them. So if Radio Romania would be 7375 at noon, which would be 16 hours UTC here, 7375 would be absorbed by the D layer. So we can't hear it. And there's a minimum usable frequency to propagate to here at that time. And that is dependent on what's the minimum frequency that's going to be able to go through that D layer and finally reach the F layer. But even that is not necessarily means you're going to win, because it's the D layer absorbs less and less as you go up in frequency. So that means if you were able to go through that D layer with an 11 megahertz frequency, the bounce back down might not be strong enough to go through again that D layer. So it's going to be absorbed, but on the bounce. So there's a minimum frequency where it actually can go through with minimum loss and come back down. And the higher frequencies do that in the daytime, can go through that D layer without being absorbed, or very minimum absorption, and bounce off the F layers. And the F layers, once again, solar activity. Higher solar activity, the F layers are denser, can actually bounce back down higher frequencies. If there's low activity, then that's why the 10-meter band doesn't propagate most of the time in low solar activity. The F layer is not ionized strong enough, and the 10-meter broadcast is going to be just going into space. It can't bounce. It doesn't bounce. So that is dependent on the solar activity. So that's what happens, and that's why daytime and nighttime propagation is so different. But the higher in latitude you live, the more this effect is interesting, because an example I just gave, 7375, would not come in at 16 hours UTC. But on December 21st, the shortest day of the year, the sun's angle here in Montreal, for example, is so low in the sky that angle actually changes the ionosphere because it has less ionization capabilities because of its low angle, which means the D layer is actually not as strong. So in winter at December 21st, there actually could be a path of listening on 7375. It might not be very strong, but because of the low solar angle and the D layer being weaker, the absorption is less. And it's not impossible that 7375 from Europe might actually make it in early afternoon. So that's why often in early afternoon winter here, for example, I'll hear some stations from different places in 41 meters, like the BBC from Madagascar, 7445, is going to make it at 18 UT, which is 2 p.m. But if they would use that same frequency in the summer, now there's too much ionization of the D layer. That doesn't make it. It's fascinating, all the different things that happen with propagation, with the ionization of the layers of the ionosphere, their impact on what frequency. So imagine being the engineer at a station and the big boss coming up to you and saying, okay, what frequencies will we be using next winter for North America? Yeah, you got to have the knowledge to like, yeah. So, well, I guess with what I see here and selectivity and all, this is what we should use as frequencies. Um, Undecided hobbies. Flux capacitor is broken. I actually watched that Back to the Future 2 days ago. I love that movie. I actually love all three of those movies. Pretty cool. What is the R sharp? Click in the wow SDR sharp. I don't use SDR sharp a lot. Can anybody just that use SDR sharp help him in how to do direct frequency entry on the keyboard with that software? PDX RS4 shortwave DXer from 1980. Merchant Marine, Pacific Ocean, Gulf of Mexico, Alaska. All this SDR, Whisper, FTA. So much to learn. Revived interest after restoration of my 1967 Macintosh MC240. Cool. Welcome aboard. Indeed, these are very interesting times, and I can tell you there's so much the hobbies offering in different ways, and SDRs are just so great. Coolium Radio says Gotherder Radio 6925 upper sideband. Let's check it out here. 6925 upper sideband. Anything here? No, but I seem to have something on 6870. 6870. There's a peak here. What's that? What's that? $68.70. There's definitely a pirate. I hear it with some music. It's in the noise, but it's there. So 6870 kilohertz AM mode, pirate radio. That's what I'm getting here. That's interesting. 6870 kilohertz AM. Hey, Chuck. Nice to have you here, my friend. Others out of Crafter's Kitchen says, my dad was a ham radio operator for decades and a rare ham that treated propagation as a science. He worked many countries around the world on 6 meters, sometimes going years in between contacts. Yeah, pretty cool. No problem, Bobby Burgess. Take care. Yeah, X80Xer, Channel 4 from Dothan, Alabama. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I was receiving. Bruce, I used to speak with Quebec when I lived in New York City on 11 meters SSB during the summer back in the 80s. Lots of fun. Oh, yeah. I remember being mad as a young before my teenage years, just as I arrived in my teenage years, maybe my first pair of walkie-talkies was, of course, it was a three channel, but only had crystals for one, which is always channel 14. And I remember that propagation back then, we were at the peak of solar activity, was so good that we could hear all of these, all the skip on channel 14. There were tons of stations from the US. And me not knowing anything, not knowing where that comes from, I was mad as hell. And I remember, when it was kind of a little quiet, saying, hey, shut up. I'm trying to talk with my friend on the radio here. Not understanding that in reality, that signal was coming from the US, It's pretty cool. Dow Jones says channel 5, 27015, is good for a South America indicator. Cool. Thanks for the info. Sid, nice to have you here. He's got his RSP-1A this week. Cool. You're having fun. You're having fun. Mr. J Spring, notice that I can get more medium wave stations on my card than my radios at home. It has to do with the fact that when you're in your car, you're further away from the noise of everything in your home. And that's why. Urban Exploration Mexico, nice to have you on board. Buenas tardes, mi amigo. Laura Robertson, nice to have you here. KO4DFJ. Sergeant Rock, nice to have you here. Great show on solar activity. We really see it in Jungle, Hawaii. Oh, yeah. Urban Exploration Mexico. Madagascar gets very loud in winter here. Yep. Really changes depending on really changes on those on those seasons and everything. Jerry DX says those engineers are smart guys. Yeah, except the ones at Radio Korea, KBS World Radio. What an idiot, keeping 15575 all the time. Sid says, at night, my old man tuned into jazz stuff on medium wave from America to the UK when I was a laddie. That's what got me started in the radio. Wow. Bruce Bernard says, amazing information show about the sunspots affecting radio frequencies. Cool AM radio. Okay, it's Ion Radio on 6870. Cool. Nissan Greenwich, nice to have you here from Dublin and listening on a Sony SW77 tonight. Cool. Jerry X had a ham from Antarctica today on 20 meters, but couldn't hear much because of the CQ contest. Wasn't too happy. Yeah, those contests sometimes they piss off a lot of people. I can tell you that. Man. Yingli says, send me all your electronic books. VE3TYA. They're in French. That's the problem. I would gladly send them to anybody that would like them, but they're in French. That's the problem. Yep, 6985 power the default. I hear it very weak sometimes. If I look here, yeah, there's a slight, very, very slight trace on 6985. There is a slight trace. Let me just, I don't know if it's strong enough to be hearing anything. Nope. It's way too weak. But it's there. You know, when it peaks, you hear that there's a signal there, absolutely. But it's too weak. Imagine if I had no noise. I would receive that. You know, when I say the noise floor is the biggest problem, that's a great example. That's a great example. Noise floor is killing the weak signals. 9670, channel 292. What am I getting on 9670? So this is 9670. I guess that must be it. There's some music right now. But it's not very strong, but it's there. Once again, if I had no noise, I would be getting it. 3955 would be a little early here because we still have a lot of sun path here. So 3955 is probably not making it here. And nope, I'm not seeing even a trace here, actually. There's some 80-meter activity, though. When you guys talk, Yingli CA says, I'll take on any radio related books. I mean, how many times I went to the library here and looked for anything electronics, anything radio. I would read old books from the 1950s about radio just because I wanted to learn more. Oh, man, brings me back to my young years. Jim, nice to have you here from Rhode Island. Kamaxi 76. At least with a bad signal, you don't have to worry about YouTube copyright striking the music. You know what, Kamaxi 76? What's funny with noise and music is that as time goes by, I don't know if it's because the algorithms get better. I have old videos of like 4 or 5 years ago from pirate stations that were really, really weak with music that get flagged today. I got one like a month ago. It's like, oh, pirate radio, whatever, from 2017, copyright strike because there's this song in it, and it was like crappy like that, with a lot of noise, some kind of music in it, and it's like, wow, their algorithm finally found out that there's a song and that noise. Yeah, I'm sure everybody wants to listen to that song and that noise. Pretty crazy. Tristan says not CQ contests. What I like about ham radio is listening to people really talk. You get a slice of life from other parts of the world. Good stuff. I would say, you know what? One thing that is, there's two things I like of amateur radio. When I listen to amateur radio bands, I like contests for one reason. Yes, they might be boring because it's only call signs and stuff, but hearing a guy talk and knowing that he's from some country real far away, I get a kick out of that. So I will actually listen to if I hear a Norwegian guy, a guy from Finland, Sweden, a lot of European countries I love to listen to, I will actually listen to that guy called CQ for an hour and checking out what other station he's actually contacting. I find that fun. And I find that fun also because it's like, well, that guy is in Sweden or that guy is in Italy. And, it's kind of cool. And so I like to do that from time to time. And contests bring that often. But I also like to have hams talk kind of technical a little bit. It's like digital modes. I don't like FT8 personally. There's something about it that I just don't, doesn't turn me on. But if I get a PSK31 real conversation, I'll be there and I'll listen in and check it out. It's a PSK31. It's like, oh, look at that. Somebody's actually typing on his keyboard and talking about something. It happened not long ago, like maybe a week ago. I was on 80 meters. And there are two guys chatting along on PSK31. It was really cool because I could hear both of them. So I just left FLDG decode, and I was just like, doing other stuff and reading the text, reading what they were saying. And I found, it was kind of cool. It was like, wow, I'm decoding PSK31. The guys are actually having a conversation. It's like RTTY. I miss Baudo RTTY when it was really popular because a lot of guys had conversations through a digital mode, which was fun. Joe Gomez recently discovered your videos for shortwave beginners. I understand SSB a little better. A lot of the shortwave for beginners series that I do, I don't know how many amateur radio operators actually came back to me and said, you know what? Your video actually made me understand what this is all about, or what that mode's all about, or what that thing is all about. I never understood it before. So, Yingli see, oh, we like radio secrets. Brian Penny's got channel 292S9 into Cape Cod. Cool. French service of Radio Waves International on 9670. The most effective and cheapest way to eliminate noise: install an MLA30 antenna. That's pretty much what you're going to get. Undecided hobbies, getting music just under 16 megahertz. Sid says, Jill, he was right in the assumption that the clone RTL SDR-V3 clone was crap. I concur with a load of crap. It's in the bin. Well, it's not that it's total crap, but with all the spurious signals and stuff, it's far from being a great. You never know what you're listening to on whatever frequency is actually on that frequency. It's not total crap, but it's, I move on to when people say, well, should I buy that? It's laugh. You should get the money and move on to at least an RSP1A. You'll get a better radio for the price. I haven't used mine in a while. I don't even know where it is. I usually stumble upon it like by accident, but I haven't. Oh, it's here. Look at that. As we're talking about it, here it is. The famous RTL SDR-V3. Maybe I should. I haven't done videos with this in a long time. It's right here. Look at that. It's right there. Pretty, I haven't done videos with this in a long time. Well, maybe I should check it out. I'll play with that tonight, maybe. I'll get, after the show, I'll get on the Facebook group and I'll tune in with the SDR here and I'll tune in with the RTL SDR V3. Make some videos and stuff. And share what I'm listening to in Undecided Hobbies. You're in Ontario, Canada. Sorry, below 12 megahertz. Okay. Well, you might be listening. There could be Radio Havana, Cuba. There's a lot of stuff in the 25 meter band usually. Here I got strong signals from 11930, which is Radio Marti. So if we tune 11930, for example, that must be Radio Marti. Let's check out 25 meters here. So 12050. That's WEWN in the US. Something on 11980. Radio Marti on 11930. 11860. There's 11850. 11850. 11780. Very good signal from Radio Nacional, Amazonas, Brazil. More music from Radio Havana, Cuba on 11760 and 11670. So there's a lot of stuff. Out there. As you noticed, I didn't stop talking while there was some music in the background. Franco AC, nice to have you on board from the UK. Which analog radio do you rate the best? The Texan R9700DX seems to get good reviews. Yeah, well, it's a more advanced analog radio. So the R9700DX is actually a double conversion analog radio. It is absolutely nice. JRDX. Oh yeah, the W1AW bulletins are nice. Absolutely. I often listen to them here on the 80 meter band. Keegan, Phil G. Smith received CBFT Montreal, Quebec when his local WBBM Chicago was off on Channel 2. Oh, wow. In 1988. Wow. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Ali Solar, nice to have you here. RT Music Production finally got a radio. Hard to keep up and wrap my mind around the ham course, though. Just along for the ride for now. Take it easy and take it one step at a time, and you'll get there. I gotta tell you that. I am fine, Highly Solar. Tristan, Joel, the godfather of shortwave radio. He gives info you can't refuse. Mr. J Spring says using a U loop with a HF Discovery Plus. We'll have to look into the MLA 30 Plus. And there's some spurious signals on the lower frequencies on the Discovery Plus. Yeah, that's what I also have. I have spurious signals on the AirSpy HF Discovery. Usually when I go below 3 megahertz. Honestly, it's a good device. But it's not all that what I read about. I can't see it, and I do not see the AirSpy HF Plus being better than a SDR Play SDR. They're equal. For me, they're equal, but it's not better. And with the crappy way that it seems that they're handling and preventing others from using software like SDR Sharp, I find that their competition, their way of doing competition is, it's just, I said it once and I'll say it again. It's the first and last thing I'll ever buy from AirSpy. I don't like companies that are badass companies that don't like to abide by rules. If you think your AirSpy HF Discovery is better, why don't you let SDR Play get into SDR Sharp? Well, Synchronous AM often will get the bandwidths on each side, so it will often make that signal more stable than propagation problems. When propagation fadings and the signal fades up and down and stuff like that, often it kind of maintains it better. Sid, Jill, you have the official? Yeah, I have the official. Oh, you have the clone one, the V3. Oh, that one, that's crap. The clone V3 doesn't work. It's a piece of crap. That I understand. JRDX can't wait to the code Morse code deep in the bush up north this summer with the Malachite DSP SDR. Should be lots of fun. Yeah, but you risk not having a girlfriend. It's one of those things. It's like, introducing the hobby to a loved one. It's like, hey, I got a great idea. Let's go up north this summer. We'll go camping and I'll decode CW Morse code on my little receiver here. It's like, yeah, I think you're going to go alone. Hey, guys. Been 3 hours and 8 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the show today. It was kind of a lot of fun. Went by pretty fast, actually. I have to order. I want to order some Chinese food tonight, so I'm going to have some Chinese food delivered. And with the Chinese food, I'm going to have fun with radio. And I'll be in the Facebook groups. Anything unusual, any pirate activity, anything that will be interesting, I'll post in the group. So why not join the group? Why not be there tonight? Why not tune the radios? And why not you guys also go in the group and say, hey, I'm listening to this. I'm listening to that. Oh, I'm getting that station. And have a fun Saturday with your radios. So hope you had a lot of fun today and learned something. It was nice to talk about radio propagation and solar activity. Canadian radio TV guy just noticed my neighbors have a bunch of people and some kids over for someone's birthday. Even our COVID protocol says gatherings are prohibited in Alberta. You know what? I have a neighbor downstairs that has friends over at least once a week, if not more, in the past month when it's a sunny day, when we are not allowed to have anybody. Some people don't respect the rules. So take care, everybody. Chastank, nice to have you on board. Sorry I'm leaving as you are arriving from Louisville, Kentucky. Nice to have you on board. Okay. Chastank says, hey guys, I hate it. So Mr. J Spring get General Steak Chicken. General Tao. Take care, my friend. Okay, Moscow Nights. We'll have Moscow Nights. Take care, my friends. Always fun to have everybody here. Thanks for being great fans and being here all the time. I'm going to have some pineapple chicken, some chicken chow mein, wonton soup, egg rolls, and I also like to have beef and broccoli and shrimp fried rice. And all of that is going to cost me a fortune, and I'll have food for 3 days. And in 3 days, I'm going to say, okay, no more Chinese food for the next 6 months. Crazy. Canadian Radio TV guy, not that I care, but I'm pretty gutsy considering I guess they know I'm out here in the backyard. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, of course, you're not the one that, I'll have to admit, it kind of makes me a little mad. But I'm not going to be the one calling the cops, If it happens, it's not me that's called the cops. Brad and Amarillo, nice to have you on board. Take care. Dave Defoe, nice to have you here. Take care. See you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Mark Drager, nice to have you here. Stay safe and radio on. It's always fun to be here with you guys. So, Chinese food day today, for me at least. Chastang, barbecue ribs, steaks, and other fine foods and treats, and some fine brews here. Cool. Undecided hobbies card ride. Man, wow, that was the perfect word. I still have the image of Seinfeld in the Chinese restaurant waiting for a table, and the guy yelling, "Card ride, card ride." And he goes and says, so did somebody call for Costanza? He says, yeah. I yelled, car ride. Nobody come. And he says, girl says curse word. I hang up. Well, I watched Seinfeld too much, I think. I still remember that. Oh, God. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. And we are leaving tonight with the classic. This should be the official interval signal. Man, this is the official team of the show now. So stay safe. And there was that time in the 80s where we actually had Radio Moscow, and it's always fun to listen to Radio Moscow. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, okay? Oops, there's an ad apparently. And here we go. Good night, comrades. Or, as Alex Jones would say, don't get those commies. Get to you. Take care, everybody. Yeah, I wanted to talk about it. We'll talk about it next time, Dennis. And I'll have more videos anyways on the ATS 909X2. There's a lot of stuff that is, it's nice. It's a good radio, but it has so many flaws that for the price, you're like, man. Watch the videos and we'll talk about it more on, at least on Wednesday. This is Radio Moscow World Service, broadcasting on 47 frequencies of your choice. The one with the soup Nazi. No soup for you. Take care, guys.